What's up, everybody? I'm Scott,
And I'm Jason.
and you are listening to Liquid Carnage. My friend, we have made it almost to the start of season 6.
I, we're so dangerously close to the start of season 6, man. And that means that the start of season 6 is we are now officially in, oh gosh, syndication. We're in syndication now.
I thought syndication was 100 episodes.
Oh God, we passed that a long time ago. But
Oh,
because
yeah,
we
we
record
passed that
every
year too,
week,
yeah.
we don't have a summer break, so we go by 5. It used to be record 20 episodes or 20 TV shows, and then after 5 seasons, then you hit syndication. So
That's
that's
what it
why.
was. I remember, like, everyone, that was always the talk. I remember reading interviews and listening to interviews that if you were a sitcom star, you wanted to make it to, season 6, because then you got that sweet, sweet syndication money that has kept on going.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. We're in it though, and like I said, you know what's going to happen. Someday, 15, 20 years from now, right? We'll be
Mhm.
older men. Maybe we're still recording. Maybe we're not. But someone's going to look back on our old episode and said, "Oh my gosh, how prophetic were these words all those years ago, and now look, 20 years later they mean something, right? They
Yeah.
mean something. And boy, we're gonna have, like, when we're in our 60s, 70s, that's when the people are gonna start listening, right? And they're gonna, oh my gosh, man, Liquid Carnage, those guys were amazing. How did we miss this? How did
You
we
know,
not know?
right? You know what blows my mind? And then I had this revelation lately because I've been watching Winning Time on HBO. It's the story of the rise of the Lakers dynasty back in the 80s.
Oh yeah, right, right,
This
right.
is 40 years ago. I mean, it was actually 43 years ago. It was 79, 80. So it was 43 years ago on how Jerry Buss got that team and drafted Magic Johnson. And to me, it's very interesting because obviously they play a lot of it up for Hollywood, and make maybe things a bit more dramatic than they were. But some of the shit that happens, really kind of mind blowing. Like last night, we learned that Magic Johnson passed up on Nike for Converse, and his deal for Nike was he was offered a $1 for every pair of shoes he sold because Nike was still a startup back in 1979. It was like $1 for every pair of shoes that was sold with his name on it, and so many shares of Nike stock that were valued at 18 cents a share at that point.
Yeah.
They did the math; it was 5 point. It'd be worth $5.2 billion today.
Jeez, that's insane, right?
Crazy,
It's just like Steve
crazy.
Jobs said, man, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can never
Yeah,
connect the dots looking
right.
forwards.
So so that got me thinking, man. I was like, you start looking like all the nostalgic stuff you grew up with. I remember growing up, we would come home and watch, like the Brady Bunch at my grandparents' house or Gilligan's Island, and that was the early '90s, and that stuff was like the early '70s and whatnot. So it was about 20 years difference. And I look back and I realize, well, shit, that's Friends now.
Yeah.
People watching Friends are looking at it the same way I looked at the Brady Bunch. You know,
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're getting dangerously close to 40 years since Top Gun first came out.
yeah, right.
I mean, Top Gun was like the big movie when I was in middle school. That was like the big movie. Top Gun, man. Oh my gosh. Now the second one is coming out, and I realized, holy shit, those are 37 years apart.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise still looks the same.
Tom Cruise has aged a little bit. Like, now that I know, because he turned 60 this year.
Is he 60?
Yeah, he's exactly 10 years older than I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was born July 7th or July 30th, 1962, and I was born August 7th, 1972, something
Oh,
like that.
you guys are
Like, we're
right
we're
there.
within 10 years of each other. Yeah,
Okay, I got you. Yeah, man,
but
it's crazy when you start putting those numbers together and you start looking at it. It to me, it's just weird. Like it's mind blowing. And Tom and I, our EP, got into this conversation tonight about music, and he sends me this random text. It was a song from Soundgarden that officially killed, like the loop of heavy metal rock and roll, like
okay,
Led Zeppelin to Soundgarden.
okay. Oh, I got you. Okay, okay.
And I sat there, things like, no, rock didn't die. Rock and roll has never died. It's evolved. And he didn't like that, but I said, if you're gonna say rock died, you're ignoring, your Van Halens, your Def Leppards, Metallicas, all those bands, Guns N' Roses, all those bands that came up in the '80s and the early '90s that evolved into the grunge scene with Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this before that there are just some bands though, like when I think of Nirvana, while there have been other grunge bands, don't get me wrong, Nirvana captured that moment in time, that late 80s, early 90s sound
Hmm.
that sparked, as I look back, that sparked a difference. I'm not sure if it's because of the commercial success, the way the band was marketed, but Nirvana, there was something about Nirvana that was different than, Soundgarden and those other bands from that time. That Alice in Chains, there was something different about Sound or Nirvana that sparked that moment in time in my memory. Those late '80s, early '90s, when I was in Seattle, they were the band that was kind of the image of what grunge was.
Yeah, and it's funny because we just feeding off that after a certain point. Once the EP makes a point, he's on that point. You can't get him off it, so all you can do is needle him.
Oh no, no, hey,
And I not to say that I would ever needle him, but I'm not going
okay,
to needle him unless I know I'm right.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
pointed out that if you're going to pass off that uh, music is dead, or rock is dead, or whatever I said that's not fair, because look at some of the modern acts we have today. The new metal scene that came on right after grunge went out. I was talking. You have to give props to Godsmack, Disturbed, Limp Bizkit, as much as you might not want to say it. Those were big bands that carried it for close to a decade. And once he said that's not rock and roll, I had to point out to him that his revered band Tool, his
was part of
favorite
that
band in the
group.
world, is considered new metal,
Yeah.
and that shut down that whole conversation at that point. I don't think
He
he wanted
probably
to.
wasn't happy with
He
you
was not
saying that.
happy with that.
Yeah.
But that came out that same genre. So, long story short, that is on the classic radio stations now, and that's kind of where this conversation got started from today. As I was driving to the store the other day, and I had Sirius Radio on, and I find myself listening more to classic rewind, like the 80s and the 90s. I still listen to Octane and the new stuff, but there's not a lot of new stuff I like. You know,
Oh, okay.
like there's just not that just rings a bell. Like, yes, I need this in my life. This is the music I want to listen to. I'm realizing that all of my music is slowly moving to the oldies stations. And if you listen to like the oldie stations on terrestrial radio, because I'm gonna take the company car somewhere, that's all I have. All the classic rock quote unquote stations are now playing stuff from the 90s and early 2000s. And I'm starting to feel that age. And I know we've talked about this before, but there are things in life that make it more and more and more apparent as time goes on.
Yeah, do you think that it's more apparent to us because it resonates or makes sense to us more than maybe like the newer music or the newer movies? They just don't relate to us, or they don't relate to our values, or I mean, is that what's causing the problem, that you just don't relate to the new music anymore?
I don't think I relate to the music, and I understand, and that's because living with two children that are getting to that age where they're starting to discover their own music and their own style. The oldest I can appreciate because she very much tries to align her musical taste with her dad, with myself, with her mom, and she has like my taste in Shinedown, and she wants to listen to that or Metallica. But she'll go see her dad and come back, and she'll be singing, Charlie Pride or Willie Nelson for weeks. So it's a nice range, and I don't mind that. But there's still some of those peaks of the modern pop stuff that sneaks through, and I just don't like that music today, man. It's just I finally see what my parents were always saying, or my grandparents were always saying. It's like I just don't understand the music.
Yeah, well, and there are certain things that, I mean, I'm sure that the older folks look at the music of now and say, "Oh, see, there's no passion in that vocal, or there's no emotion in those lyrics that means something." I mean, when I was a kid and I would hear, Hank Williams, or I would hear, Dolly Parton, those lyrics meant something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it just goes where it's almost like the wonder of your youth allows you to relate to the music of the time as something magical. It's bringing out emotions that are new or maybe are raw. Whereas when you're older, you kind of put a little bit of a not a wall per se, but you put a barrier between those emotions. And so when a young band starts talking about love and love lost, kid,
You
I've
don't know
been
it.
there. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah,
I've been there. Don't even
you'll be all
don't
right.
even think about it.
I think I look at it from the perspective like if you look at you know any song written by Queen, you look at the writers, it's Freddie Mercury, maybe one of the other band members, but there's it's the band. If you look at like any pop star today, like the songwriters, you have 15 different writers on a song.
Yeah, that's
That
true.
that is like a 3 minute lyrical poem with a beat. How many
Well,
people
and
does it take to write that song?
yeah, well, and I'm sure a lot of it is how much of it is there is an industry. We forget that while we want to embrace the pure artistry of the music or the pure talent of those writers, there is now a business involved.
Yeah,
You know, Ariana Grande, as talented as she is as a singer, I would venture to say probably does not have a huge participation in the music that she sings,
yeah.
and that's okay. That's okay. It's a new world. It is a business. We're in that 15 minutes, and if your 15 minutes is gone, you don't come back that easily. So you got to constantly, keep writing and keep acting and keep putting, that stuff out. And so I get it. We're in a different world, and let's be honest, maybe the music now is written to the young listener who has about a 10-minute attention span and is moving on past that music once it's gone. So, writing a deep lyric is really not that important because the depth of the lyric will be gone in 5 minutes and
Well,
it's
let's
wasted.
let's be real though. I don't think kids today understand depth of thought because of its lack of experience. And I say that because so many kids, and this now it's an old man soapbox rant show, but so many kids don't get out and live life. They sit behind their screens, their keyboard warriors. They play their video games. They don't experience life the effect that we did at that age. So their life experience is limited. And I see that a lot, because I'm coaching middle school baseball. I deal with these kids every day. And I know we were dumb when we were that age, but some of these kids are like, you can't, there's no way. There is no way that you could be this dumb. And you talk to them and you realize that it's because outside of baseball, which they get to play, a couple hours a week, they're playing, what's the Fortnite and Modern Warfare, and that's it. They go home and they play at night, and they play their friends, and they don't leave the house.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. I mean, I know that, like, I love when I think of Taylor Swift, I love her early stuff.
yeah,
Before she was kind of the big icon that she was, some of those first songs that she wrote, and I emphasize that she wrote those songs when she was a teenager. Some of the lyrics, even as young as they might have been, there were some powerful lyrics coming from this 13-year-old, this 14-year-old, where you said, wow, there's something different about her than just any of the other pop stars that are out there, right?
yeah.
And I think of Ed Sheeran the same way. If you listen to Ed Sheeran's old stuff, the struggling Ed Sheeran, the one that probably was coming up in the business, some of his lyrics are amazing. Like, he's just a talented songwriter.
Yeah, he's I, it's funny. I listen to stuff I was talking about him the other day too. He's one of those guys I'd love to see in concert, because I've heard the stories. Noreen's seen him, and she said that it's an amazing show. Uh, I appreciate the thought and the effort that he puts into his music, and to me, it's got so much range.
I tell you, when we went to the concert, it was him and his guitar and the soundboard, and that was it. It was a toe board, where you can record the loops.
Yeah,
That was it. There was no band. There was no backup singers. There was nothing. It
see,
was just
that's
him.
to me that's pure talent, and also you're making more money because you don't have to pay a band if you can do it all by yourself.
Well, and I mean, how much is the like when I sometimes think of some of these young bands, like a Justin Bieber. As I've gotten older and as he's gotten older, I actually find him very enjoyable to listen to. I enjoy his talent. Um, but how much of the early stages was all the commercialization of the Beliebers and we have to keep this money train going.
Is he still putting stuff out?
Oh yeah, all the time, all the
Huh.
time, and his stuff is good. I mean, the stuff that he's been writing lately. He got married, fell in love, is past some of the immaturity of his 19, 20-year-old self.
So you're saying life
Um,
experience has given him more depth.
I think that he probably has also come to a point where he just doesn't give a shit about what he needs to do to make the money and get the Beliebers going. He's now trying to tap into, I'm going to be an artist to be an artist, and I don't care. You know how some of these artists, as they get older, they don't need to do things for the money, right? They
Yeah.
don't need to do things for the record deals. They're in and of themselves talents, and they say, you know what? Now the projects that I'm going to work on are for me.
Yeah.
And some of the songs that Justin Bieber has put out in the last, um, 3 to 5 years, I enjoy it very much. I mean, the lyrics are good, the messages are good, powerful lyrics, the music's good. I
I
have no problem with it.
I will give him credit. He did have one of the best lines ever in any song ever written, and that to this day for me is still, "My mama don't like you, and she likes everyone."
Yeah, but my
To
mama
me,
don't like you, and she likes everyone. Yeah,
that to me is you say what you want about him. I'm not a fan of him, but I like that line, so I dig that song. So I and you and I have discussed your taste in music for a long time. It's not the same as mine, which is fine.
mm-mm.
But to each their own, and diversity is the key, and that's what I think the oldie stations. That's what I like about satellite radio now, and on demand radio. You can pretty much listen to whatever you want whenever you want, so you're not stuck waiting for the song you're hoping to hear on the radio, so you can't turn it off. It's always there.
Do you think that part of your movement toward the older stations also has to do with your requirements for talent and for quality have improved as you've gotten older?
I don't know if that's the case. I honest to God, this is what I think it is. A lot of the stuff I love, because a lot of the artists I listened to 20 years ago are still putting out music, and that's on the newer stations. But if I want to hear their older stuff, that's where I have to go. If I don't want to like find it on Amazon Radio or whatever else. So,
But is it when you're searching for it, why are you searching for it? What's the reason for
and
searching for
sometimes
it?
it's not even searching for it. It's just I'm driving down the road, and we'll take classic rewind. That's a 70s 80s uh rock station, like Foreigner, Styx, REO Speedwagon. I don't necessarily listen to that or seek that stuff out, but I could be driving down the road, and if I hear a song by them or the Eagles, like, oh yeah, I've always liked that song. I'll go search out more of their stuff.
Yeah,
So
I think that's kind of a big important part. Like, I mean, look at Queen. We talked about Queen earlier. They have had a resurgence in the last 5 years since Adam Lambert came on with them to sing Freddie Mercury,
mhm.
mainly because all of that fantastic music was kind of lost for 20 years because Freddie Mercury died, and now we're like, oh man, the catalog of Queen music, we forget how powerful and how much of it there was.
Mhm.
And people are saying, wow, this is a good band, and they have a lead singer now who does his best to do it on his own terms, but to embrace Freddie Mercury and the skills of him as a vocalist. And I think that's why they've been so popular for the last, what, 5 to 10 years, because we forget all the great music.
Is
We
there
forget that.
is there, because I know you've got satellite radio too, and you listen to some stuff. Is there a song that you might have heard on the radio driving down the road that has led you to go do some diving into either the Amazon Music or the Apple Music, or Spotify, to find an album that you didn't realize that you appreciate so much more now, than when it first came out originally 20, 30 years ago?
I I I I I guess I would say no. I don't listen to music like that where you know I don't listen to music like that. I can say that one of the things that I have done on YouTube more is sometimes they'll have old. um, recording sessions of the Beatles
Hmm.
where you just watch them break down a song before it's a song, right? And like Get Back was the song. Get
Yeah.
Back was the song. And you just watch them and they're sitting there waiting for John Lennon to come to the recording session and you hear just this kind of strumming of a guitar by Paul McCartney. And then all of a sudden both Harrison and Ringo Starr just they heard something in what he played, and you just see them collaborate. Oh, and then you see George Harrison pick up the car and start a guitar and start playing a little um, riff behind what Paul McCartney's playing, and then Ringo Starr kind of gets a little drum beat going, and you see these great minds that shows the brilliance. I'm sure the Rolling Stones probably have similar things where you watch and you say, that's the brilliance of the music is
Yeah.
watching these minds just recognize in each other that we together can put something in place.
And
Um,
I do that with I do that with a lot of the Rolling Stones. Because they're doing their 60th anniversary tour this year, 3 year up.
Jesus, that's
60th.
crazy, man. I mean, that's just insane.
Well, Metallica's doing their 40th. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you
know, I
realize
know,
it's
I know, I know. Crazy.
bands just keep on going. And to me it's interesting because then there's the other side too where you find other music that like, oh, you know what? I dig this. I like how this style goes, or I like this new artist. And I came across one. And I guess he's fairly popular in like the Tennessee region, just along the circuit. His name's Jelly Roll,
Oh, okay. I never heard of him.
and he's like a rock. He's got like a rock vibe, but then he's got like an old soul country vibe to him. And if you haven't listened to him, I'd say check him out because
Okay.
he kind of goes in two very different directions on his EP. But everything's very good. It's very heartfelt and emotional, and I respect that. And he's actually touring with Shinedown this fall on their new album. So hopefully I'll catch them when they come through Phoenix or Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes to music, it is kind of at least for an older generation. There's the nostalgia that comes with listening to those songs. Like sometimes now, I've been listening to the on Sirius Radio 2000, the decade of the tens. It's like
Yeah,
on the tens or something, and a song will come up and it instantly, we talked about this, it instantly brings me back. And I
yeah.
remember, oh gosh, that was such a good song. And I remember what we were doing during that time.
Oh, yeah.
I think that I'm okay with the fact that in 20 years, I will look back at some of the songs that came out today, and I'll probably have a better appreciation of them than I do now.
Oh, yeah. I do that.
I mean, I'm sure that that'll happen. But right now, I'm looking back at the songs from 2000s and 2010s and watching and appreciating those now over some of the newer stuff that just it's the music of the day and
Well,
I'm not of the day.
Denise and I were getting ready for a fundraiser the night. And I had YouTube on, just playing, probably like a throwback mix or whatever. And Backstreet Boys, Backstreet's Back, and then NSYNC's Pop came on back to back.
Hmm.
And 21 years ago, 20 years, however long ago it was, like, oh man, that's kind of dorky. They're boy bands, but now it's like, all right, well, that's my generation. Like, that's the stuff that gets mixed in with Dre and Snoop and Eminem and the Limp Bizkit stuff. So it's not as annoying to me now as it was back then. But I watched the videos because he used to have this show called Making the Videos at the
Okay.
early 2000s, and that's how they would premiere like the new NSYNC or Limp Bizkit video. It's they show you how they make it, and then they premiere it, and it's on TRL for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But you watch it, 22 years later, with all the technology that we have now for making music videos. Not that they make a lot, but technology for just making movies, and you're like, wow, this is shit. This is terrible. You know, like, and I thought this was great. Holy crap! But
Well,
yeah, man,
and
it's fun to take those trips down memory lane.
yeah. Well, and
It's
let's be honest. I mean, when you're looking at today's world, we need things that bring us back to a simpler time, a better time, better emotional memory, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's probably why most people gravitate toward listening to songs from the past and being nostalgic. Sometimes we're talking 300 years. Sometimes some of the classical music I just listen to and think, my God, like no wonder it stood the test of time.
Yeah. The
The
beat still
talent,
hits.
the talent to write that and
Mhm.
to close your eyes and feel an emotion overcome you when there's no singing. There's no, it's just the power of the music. I think we yearn for, you know, we yearn for those simpler times. Yearn for those better times. And I know that I like listening to those old songs because it does bring me back to a better time.
Well, as we start to wrap up the show and this conversation today, as you mentioned earlier, you are turning 50 this year.
Yes.
So I think throughout the next few months, as we lead up to your birthday, I'm going to share fond memories of you that
I think yes,
in our time and our adventures together. And there's a very little known story I will share with us as we wrap it up. But we used to go camping for our friend Dean for his birthday. We used to call it Kowalska Fest. And one year, and it's probably about 10 years ago now. In fact, I think it was, this is the 10-year anniversary of it.
the first Kowalska Fest. Yeah.
No, not the first Kowalska Fest. This would be the 11th anniversary of that, or 12th.
Oh,
So that's
that's right. Yeah, because it's his
2010.
for the 39th, not my 39th. Yeah.
Yeah. So, at any rate, you were a big fan of the Nicki Minaj song "Starships,"
Yes.
and you were able to rap that half drunk,
Aha.
while looking at what you thought was a caribou. In fact, it
Yep.
was an elk that
It
took
was
a
an
banana
elk.
from you.
And I said, "Look, caribou," and you guys
Yes,
said, "Please give me the alcohol."
yes. We cut you off, and that was Friday afternoon, 10 minutes after getting there.
I was gonna say we were only there probably because it was daylight, so we'd
Yeah,
only been there for an hour.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
We were not there long.
I
Uh,
think that was the same weekend that I did the Lightning too.
yeah, I think so.
I think because there was the Lightning
Yeah,
in the
a lightning
background, and I
storm.
said, "Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, there's lightning,
yeah.
lightning!" And I couldn't get out thunder and lightning. It was lightning.
Oh, it was good times. Good time.
God, yeah. Oh man, yeah. I'll just think of some of the good memories we've had as we approach the fifth big 5-0.
That's right. 50 memories for 50 years of Jason. That's what we'll call it. I don't think there'll be 50 memories, but
Yeah,
yeah, we'll work on it.
yeah. I mean, we lost many of those memories due to whiskey. I think
Yeah, I
so.
think so. I think so.
There were plenty of memories that were blasted to whiskey.
Yes. But also, I will share with the world that Jason taught us the rules that 50 no's and yes is still a yes,
That's
and that
true.
applies to every aspect of life, not just
That's
dating.
true. 50 no's and a yes is still a yes. And even to this day, sometimes I forget that, when I come up against a hurdle or come up against something, an obstacle, hey, 50 no's and a yes still is
Still
a
a yes.
yes. So keep fighting through, baby. Keep
Yeah, just
fighting
keep
through.
plugging. All right. So
Hey,
if you
and in honor of Journey, don't stop believing, baby.
don't stop believing. So,
Wow.
if you have an old album that you really got into because you were listening to an oldie station that you didn't realize that you could connect with an album so old so much, we want to hear about it. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. If you have any new music recommendations for our EP, Tom, I'm sure he'd love to hear it. Hit him up on Twitter and Instagram at liquid_EP.
Now I'm gonna go listen to some old music, man. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, you know
Hey,
what? I heard Disturbed's putting out a new album, so I'm gonna go dig up some like old school, like first albums of Disturbed.
oh man, just to see the chronological development of that band.
I think just the evolution of all these bands. Like you listen, like God, man, these guys. I love the evolution. I do. Most bands have a great evolution, and then some just kind of go, "That's weird." Like U2
Yeah,
did that. U2 was great up until discotheque. That's like, all right, it got a little weird.
yeah,
The
yeah,
'90s was a weird time for U2.
yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of bands in the '90s. They had one like awesome album, and then just wow, they spent their entire nut on the one album, and then that was it. You know what I mean?
Bush, Third Eye Blind. Just saying.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, Alanis Morissette to me. I'm sorry. I mean, I know that people argue that, but Jagged Little Pill was an amazing album, and then sorry, that's all I gotta say.
It's like crap.
Anyways, thanks for listening,
Yeah.
everybody.
Take us
We
home,
appreciate
Jason.
you. We appreciate you. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some liquid courage. Bye.